Hi, this is Phil, and I'm here to tell you all about the Capes and Lunatics Patreon. Get early access to all of our interviews, including the monthly Chichester chats with writer and comic book legend D.G. Chichester, new episodes of classic Capes and Lunatics shows, including The Quantum Zone, This, That, or the Third, and many, many more specials, all completely uncensored. Access starts for $3 a month, full video when you pledge $5 a month. Check out the link in our show notes or go to patreon.com/capesandlunatics. Hope to see you there.
Avast me hearties, and welcome once again to Full Stream Ahead. I am your Captain Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is me first mate and skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Welcome, Mozz, and welcome to Chapter 24, The Return, Season 3, Episode 8 of The Mandalorian. In a world of capes and lunatics, gods and monsters, there are those who fight to reclaim their home. They are the Mandalorians. The Mandalorian and his allies confront their enemies. Our director this week is Rick Famuyiwa. There we go, Rick Famuyiwa. Apologies. Writers are, of course, Jon Favreau, George Lucas, who came up with the whole concept of, Star Wars and the stars. Prior to that, never even considered.
No.
Jon Favreau has it written by and created by this week. And it's a great capper. Yeah. Let me just say, it's a great capper. The legends of the spies were not spies, and that's good.
Right. So we were just chasing
we're chasing our own tails, which is what happens. That's what spies do. They get you to chase your own tail. I
guess the real spies were the writers.
Well, the real spies were the friends we made along the way. No. And that's the idea. And it comes to a differentiation of how you might use the word spies. Because spies can also mean scouts. And that's what the team is in this, is they are the scouting party. And maybe that's an intentional play on this, is that there are the spies and there are the scouts. And there are the spies, because we do know that our good friend Omega over there is a spy for Moff Gideon, who meets an end, maybe, but we'll get to that in a minute. So this comes in hot and heavy in the battle. We do see Jin. Oh, I'm forgetting his last name.
Din Djarin,
being led down the hall by some who are clearly just rank and file troopers in the Mandalorian armor. And that is, I think, what is the most interesting aspect of this, is they've got the Mando armor, which is super helpful if you're fighting against people who don't fight Mandalorians. But against Mandalorians who fight other people in Mando armor, it's like they're just the saddest sacks, fresh out of basic training.
Right. But they're still able to overtake Mando, which is kind of, a little disappointing.
Well, they did beforehand, but they were like 6 of them, and they was cut off.
Yeah.
But this does lead to what is just, to me, the best scene, which is when little Grogu, who we have to remember is 50.
Right.
It's like he is a baby, but he also is a full-grown adult. It's like a weird thing with their species, where their intellectual capacity exceeds their physical capacity, and possibly even their emotional capacity, although I think he's catching up with his emotional capacity.
Right. It's taken a while, though.
Well, yeah, well, that's the idea, is that basically, from what I've heard from Star Wars lore, effectively, this species, they have this very long baby stage, and then they hit tridactyl puberty. And then, like, over the next 10 years, he's basically going to become, a prime 20-year-old. And will be there for, like, another 300 years.
Oh, interesting. Until
he starts to age and becomes Yoda's state, which is still very powerful, but, he starts to feel the age, You get to be 500, 600 years old. That's when you start feeling that, my arms never used to hurt like this after that. That's the advantage of being a 900-year-old species,
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And they are a species that is just so evolved within the Force that it's like, you can't even say that it's the Force that makes them live longer. It's just that this is just how their species evolved. But we do get Grogu to save Din Djarin, which is great, because it's always good when the kid who is stepping up, he's stepping up. He is still a foundling, but, Din knows he wants him to be an apprentice. He wants to be an apprentice. He's mad that his vocal cords haven't matured enough that he can talk yet. Because he realized that's how all these big things communicate. If you can't say it, no one understands you.
Yeah.
And it's like really frustrating, I'm sure, for him. Because it's like, we saw how excited he was when he could say yes and no. And he comes in and he's just like, no. You don't do this, okay? Don't you touch my papa. And of course, once free,
he took care of a much bigger threat in the very first episode of the entire series. That big rhino thing in the middle of the
the Mudhorn, yeah.
Way scarier than these puny little, fighters in superior armor. I didn't think he was going to have any problem with those guys.
No, and it was good. And it actually even gets even more fun when he has to fight the elite guard,
Yeah.
And he basically does a nice little Three Stooges routine with them, which is fun, And that's the thing about this. This is all, this is such a poignant moment, because this is the Mandalorians all coming together against a common threat. And that is so much of what this is about. It's about the Mandalorians dealing with the fact that as Bo-Katan, who has come through her cycles and has come to understand the failures of her old philosophy, says no other culture could ever defeat Mandalore. We were only defeated by our own internal divisions, which is why we need the way, and we need an acceptance within the way so that we can all work together to build a world. And we see in this episode, I believe, this is where we see the Mandalorian farms.
Oh yeah, the underground farms, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is such a beautiful thing. How the Mandalorians who stayed, that last ragtag group, who are trying their dangest to stay, says, no, the plants came back. Like, you can carpet bomb this whole place, but all the plants are here, all the animals are here, all the life of Mandalore remains. And small pockets. And small pockets for now. But it is this idea that we can grow these things and we can survive, we can sustain ourselves. That, yes, it's a hard life. It's a rough life. It's like, sort of, when, Kirk sends Khan to Alpha Ceti 5, I believe. And, and he, it's a difficult world. It's a harsh world like Australia, but for superior men like yourselves, should have no trouble taming it. Now, of course, unfortunately for Khan, it was actually a lot harder than it looked. But for the Mandalorians, because this actually was a living world before they got there, there was actually a lot of life left. And clearly there's a lot of life and the Force within this planet. That the energies within this planet, the energies within these Force, this Force entity planet still lives, which is one of these interesting things. It's going to be interesting to see how they play out the stories of these characters, because we've already seen the pre-Mandalorian Mandalorians, the beings who lived here before the Mandalorians got here, and it'll be interesting to see. Well, who knows? Why are they a part of the creed? Well, we'll see what happens, Tristan. We'll see how it all plays out as time goes on. But in the moment for myself, it's very exciting to see how they're regrouping and reforming themselves. And of course, that leads very directly into, I think, the battles that everyone decides to go into.
Yeah.
And
goes shooting up into the sky, and we're like, okay, there's the saboteur. But no, he was honest in his intentions. Hey, Bo-Katan needs your help. Trouble's coming your way. Let's make this a decoy situation.
Yeah, and Axe Reeves shows himself to be a true hero, which I love in that. Yeah. I love in that. That here's this guy who clearly every reason to be a turncoat and a villain. But at the end of the day, he's like, no, there's some things more important than that, which is, I think, a typical tale that is told. One of the things about a lot of, so here's to give another level, to go back to other levels that we've dealt with before, there is always that idea that when you are an oppressed people, the only way to survive is often through criminal endeavors. You have to be a mobster, much like Boba Fett, much like, whoever. You have to set yourself up in this spot, because if you don't, because that's the one spot that the law lets you exist in. So you can be a bounty hunter. You can be a criminal. You can deal with all sorts of evil things. But what makes you an honorable, what makes you I don't want to say lawful evil, but maybe like a lawful, still a good character, maybe a chaotic good character or a neutral good character, is the fact that law, that rule that you live by still holds true to you. And no matter what you may do as an evil character, that's why I like the term lawful evil for that, because it's like that idea that, yeah, I am evil. Yes, I will kill not just the men and women, but the children, but according to my code, according to the law.
Honor is different than morality.
Exactly. And so for him, yeah, he is probably the most evil guy in the town, but it's like the rule of acquisitions with the Ferengi. It's like, a contract is a contract among Ferengi. Among Ferengi, we obey our laws. We obey that. The people that aren't us, well, they're lucky that they get to participate in the transaction.
Right.
As they say, a fool and his money, lucky to get together in the first place. So that you've got this stuff and you want to trade, we're going to work with you. We're going to give you as decent of a deal as we think is appropriate, but just understand that you don't screw over another Frankie. And that's how the Mandalorians are here. They're not going to screw over another Mandalorian. And in this moment, they're going to say, hey, you get the wounded out of here. You get all of the fighters that can go down to the planet. I'm going to set up the decoy. I'm going to take on our big prize. And again, this is a wonderful thing about playing on the psychology of the Empire. The Empire wouldn't think you'd give up your Star Cruiser,
right,
to let everyone else get away. They're going to think, no, that's the prize. That's what it keeps. But to them, it's like, that's just another ship. Honestly, it's very awkward to park,
Yeah.
It's like, and that's the thing, is that Mandalorians don't conquer worlds at this time. But it's nice to drive in on your big Cadillac and make a show.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's just a Cadillac to them.
Right.
It's not
mansion.
Exactly. It's not something that makes them powerful. What makes them powerful is each individual Mandalorian fighting as a unit.
Yeah, and what they have now is a seat at the table. Once they have somewhere to belong to, if they have a home, they can have a representative, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which is what Jack Black was sort of talking to them about. Hey, man, you guys are about to get a planet. I can help you get a seat at the table.
Exactly, because that's how you do. And between Navarro and Paz, you got these two planets. They're like, hey, man, these nice Mandalorians, these guys deserve to have their own planet. Let's make sure
they deserve to have their planet back.
They deserve to have their planet back, yeah. And that's the thing. And this is, but of course, this goes into what, what's his name? Giancarlo Esposito, Moff Gideon says, about how the riches of Mandalore, plundered by the Empire, will make him the most important bigwig in town. And now there's a lot of talk, I just got to say this, about the fact that Giancarlo Esposito shaved his mustache for this role. And we see that all the clones don't have a mustache. And so there are all those that think that the Giancarlo Esposito we see fall is in fact a clone. I don't think that. Because I think that Giancarlo Esposito thought he was Giancarlo Esposito, was fighting as Giancarlo Esposito, died as Giancarlo Esposito, expressly because I don't think because he clearly didn't have the Force yet. And this would that the clones
that makes sense.
Were going to be Force sensitive, and we see this when Grogu sees the clones, and one clone opens his eyes before Din Djarin, pushes the "let's kill all the clones" button, which actually, and that's one of those things that like this actually is a super smart keep a kill all the clones button available when you're making clones, because at some point you go, oh, you know what, this is looking bad for some reason. I don't like where this is going. Let's kill all the clones.
Yeah.
But because one opened their eyes first, because they felt Grogu's presence, makes me think that clone survived. So I don't think we've seen the last of Giancarlo Esposito. I just think the next Giancarlo Esposito will be the clone taking Moff Gideon's place.
If one of them did survive.
And this one, yes, and this one having Force powers. This one being a threat on a Jedi Sith level. Well, that's what he wanted, but he wanted them to be controlled by him. But now the clone is in charge. So that's the interesting aspect of it. Is if now that one clone comes back in charge. And what would be very interesting is if that one clone finds discarded Mandalorian armor and then joins the what do they call that? The cohort. Because if he can't take off his helmet, you don't know who that is. And now, within the entire concept, there is one more Mandalorian who has come and said, I know the way, and this is the way.
Right. And now there'll be two Mandalorians that are Force sensitive, because Bo-Katan clearly can pull objects to her.
Can she?
Well, in that scene where she rescued Din Djarin from the little robot in the caves, she was pinned down and she was, and the Darksaber came to her. And she was
was that her or was that Grogu?
Oh, interesting. No, Grogu wasn't there with her, was he? He was up in the ship at the time, wasn't he?
I'm not sure. Because we do see, and that's actually one of the most interesting things. We see Grogu really using his Force powers in this. Both to avoid capture, to move things out of the way, and then, of course, the big the big moment at the end when, as everything is collapsing, he parts the sea of fire like Moses parting the Red Sea.
I am Grogu. I am
Grogu.
Like Groot at the end of Guardians.
Yeah, well, he's protecting his people. And, I think that's an amazing moment for that scene. And before that, and this I think is one of the most important things, and one of the things that feeds into this Exodus legend of the Mandalorians, is when Bo-Katan is fighting Moff Gideon. And even as he's wearing his robo armor and everything else, complaining about Mandalorians and their trinkets, and he crushes the Darksaber, which is one of these things which, to me, it kind of is this point of like when they come out of Egypt and they build the golden calf. And the golden calf is actually not meant to be a graven image. It's meant to be a symbol of the God that led them out. The image is meant to be the mythosaur. It's meant to be that great image, but eventually the graven image becomes the idol to behold. And it's not about the spirit of the way that the Mandalore that Paz Vizsla had set through his Jedi-Mandalorian symbiosis, but it becomes simply the mark of sovereignty. And that, devoid of the way, is simply a golden calf. It is simply a trinket that the other Mandalorians follow. But once it is destroyed, then it loses its power because it was a trinket.
Right.
And now we follow the power of the way and the path of the Mandalorians.
It also was an interesting point because, like, it gave Moff Gideon a false sense of security when he destroyed it. And that overestimation of his position is what they were able to leverage.
Well, and that is absolutely true, because that, I think, is always the point with this, with all of the Empire, with all of these. It's always about their overestimation of their power and security. They're never coming into this stuff thinking, oh, I have to, which is, interestingly enough, the entire plot of Grand Admiral Thrawn, that in the stories, he is this guy who is very much about, no, I never overestimate my enemy. That the only way you can defeat an enemy is by understanding them, understanding what they hold dear, and then utilizing those passions they have towards your end. How do you direct the urges of, the history of these people to your end? But of course, the Empire does not see anyone but themselves as the worthy of consideration in that way. Everyone else is a foolish savage, simply there for exploitation. And it is the willingness to learn from your enemies that makes Grand Admiral Thrawn a threat. And of course, why he's actually a super sympathetic villain. It's why he's such a popular villain, because he can kill everybody. He's more than happy to do that. But he doesn't do it out of a foolish sense of killing people. He just wants to understand how to direct the goals of his empire, his group.
Right.
It's an interesting thing with Thrawn. And I have never read the books, I will say this, so all of this is secondhand from other scholars who have done the work and have given me their information. So it's that, and to what I'll say, that is the joy of our modern world, that you can get all of this excess nerdery that you did not do the reading of, but that others have done it, and others have done the deep exploration of.
Yeah, he's gotten very good at writing cliff notes.
Yes, well, but to be fair, that's all you need.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. There's This was a point I made about canon recently. Because, there's always this discussion. Oh, is this canon? Is that canon? What exactly happened? How did it occur? And this is something that has gone on in comic books since I was a wee lad. And the thing about canonicity is the term comes, of course, from canon law in the Roman Catholic Church, where they say, what is a canonical book? What is a canonical teaching? And what is not? That said, there are canonical teachings, like the book of Genesis, that are understood not to be literal accounts in the Roman Catholic Church. It's like, you don't have to take every line of this as if this was, on Monday this happened, on Tuesday this happened. It's not a diary. It is a book that is meant to teach us about a lot of different things. And I use this explanation because this is a classic explanation, which is that in a previous book written by, I want to say, John Byrne, there is a story where Quicksilver, who is married to Crystal, who is an Inhuman, has a child, and Quicksilver, for those who don't remember, is a mutant. Crystal is an Inhuman. They have a baby, but when they actually do the 23andMe with them, they said, actually, this kid is just completely human. There's nothing inhuman or mutant about them. They're just a normal human. God bless them. They'll be fine. And Quicksilver won't accept that. And so he goes to expose his child to the Terrigen mists as a baby, which is like something you are not supposed to do. That is like very bad in the Inhuman culture. And he's just so mad because, of course, he grew up as a mutant supremacist and he married an Inhuman. He really felt that this should make his children be even more better, and yet that they should just be regular humans. It was something he couldn't bear. And he says, anything is better than being a human. And then Lockjaw, who is this gigantic dog that was a member of the Inhuman family, or the Inhuman royal family, just says, not anything is better. And makes this point. It's like, listen, I know what you're going through, but just understand, when you go in to just gain powers, it will change you. And how it changes you may not be in the way you think. And you look at this when you look at this in the context of the Inhumans, where there are Inhumans who are covered with scales, who have big cloven hooves, and there are Inhumans who do look very non-human, who look inhuman, if you will, that you're wanting to subject your child to something that you don't know what the outcome is going to be. What you need to understand is sometimes it's best just to wait. And that's this whole thing. Now, years later, John Byrne, the exact same writer, effectively retconned this and said that scene didn't happen, that it was a joke that they were playing on Ben Grimm, or that they were a joke they were playing on Quicksilver. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if Lockjaw spoke or not. What matters is, what was the story and how did that affect the mythos of the Inhumans, and how this idea of entering into the chamber to change you, really how sacred of a ritual it is. And within that entire concept, I think that there's always this room for things that anything you had previously read, it's okay if it didn't happen just the way you read it, because that's usually how canon works, especially in comic books and TV shows. Like, what happened to be said, we can discuss that later, but what was important is what was said something that informs the character and story and brings it forward. So that's a nice little tangent I had to go on canonicity. And part of that, what were we talking about? I know we went through the golden calf.
Right. I think we were up to, well, for me, I think what was the interesting point was how Moff Gideon walks in and starts talking about this grand plan that he had, that the clones were going to be force sensitive. I thought that was super like convenient. It always made me feel like there were supposed to be 3 more episodes slowly letting us see what those clones were so we can see his plan, so we wouldn't have to be told a little soliloquy about what his plans were. I felt like there were like 3 more episodes that we could have gotten. I would have appreciated it.
Well, what I'll say is, I think there could have been more episodes that could have done that. I don't know that it necessarily made sense to make those episodes.
Why not?
Well, here's the truth of it. At this point, and this is this interesting idea about when you're writing genre fiction. At a certain point, do you just accept the idea that people know things? And this is another interesting point I recently read. This was someone else's meme about how the fact that magical systems usually don't have a lot of explanation to them. And someone made the point, like, yeah, it would be like if every time you wrote a modern novel, you had to explain exactly how internal combustion engines work.
Yeah, but this isn't that. This is the
meat
of the story.
It is to an extent.
This is the big bad guy. And his plans are explained to us in 30 seconds, right?
Yeah.
That I don't feel satisfied with that. I feel like that's a cop-out.
Well, true. And I'll say that's true. But, and I guess this is what I will say about it. Let us say we had another episode where we saw some of the clones in training. And we saw them using their force. And that's an interesting idea. But immediately opens up this possibility of, because again, clones are their own beings and may then decide to do something completely different. And now you've got this open-ended possibility that when you kill the clones, first off, you're killing the Bad Batch. So that's going to have some bad effects on people because you can't deal with awake clones the same way you can with sleeping clones.
I'm not saying we needed to see awake clones, but they needed to piecemeal feed us what his plans were. I didn't need to be told what you could have taken the entire season to build up in 30 seconds.
Well, no, because we already knew all of this was all established. This was all established in the earlier seasons about how they were getting the M count clones. And
we shouldn't need a monologue like that. Everything should be understood what the consequences are and what the stakes are.
Well, yeah.
I'm going to come in like, here's what was at stake, just in case, let's just your way.
And to be fair, what I will say is, I don't think he needed the monologue for a lot of the fans that have been in it for a while, because even people in the last episode were talking about how, when he says what the thing that is inside this is me. Mm-hmm. And people were saying, and it will be force sensitive clones. Now, of course, there were people who thought that Moff Gideon might be force sensitive as well, at that time. So but because we knew he had been working with force sensitive clones, it makes sense to a certain extent that, these beings he was creating were going to be force sensitive Moff Gideon clones, and again, why make them himself? That's just hubris,
It's only going to make it harder for yourself to kill yourself,
Well, it's only going to make it harder for them for you to control them.
Right, because you already imbued them with the idea that they deserve everything that you worked so hard for. Just
exactly.
By looking like you, So you've automatically got an army of rivals who think they're better than you.
Well, they know they're better than you because you told them you made them better.
Right.
And now they just have to deal between themselves about which one of them will be the better one. Yeah. Which is why, arguably, the one Gideon who maybe awoke and survived is maybe the best case scenario. Because he does not have the baggage of either a impotent father or equally skilled brothers.
Hmm.
He is his own being. And he knows he is the superior being. And so in his own superiority, now he has to rebuild his universe.
So in a weird way, he did survive. I wonder if the clones carried over all his memories as well or not.
I would hope so. I mean, this is what I'll say. It makes the story a lot easier if he did.
Yeah. Because in that way, all he did was build a cocoon and come out a butterfly.
Although there's an interesting aspect to that, which is you could imprint on the clones all the knowledge that you want them to have. But within that there is, and this is sort of this is a thing Dr. Doom sometimes has a problem with, is he has a machine that can imprint you with all of his memories. But it's not a direct remaking of his memories, because obviously he never wants to imbue you with the memories that makes him look bad.
Ooh.
So it's going to be memories that he received that maybe don't make him look as poncy as maybe he is, you know?
Because chipping away at the little insecurities or whatever incongruencies that he had that might be seen as weaknesses and limiting them entirely, making him ever more powerful, ever more arrogant and confident.
Yes, which is in its own self is a weakness.
Ooh, yeah.
You see, that's the thing. It's like it's the cracks that heal that make us strong, not the perfect, line.
Yeah, but what if you use the first body to develop all those things, and then once you've learned all those lessons, you're like, okay, give me a brand new body without all the scars on my emotional body or my physical one, carrying over those lessons without the baggage.
Theory. It's a good idea. It's just a question of whether Moff Gideon was able to do it. And it's one of those kind of things where, like, Dr. Pershing, I would have saved Dr. Pershing. Yeah, no, I can do that. But they baked his brain while they were doing the whole thing, because they couldn't let his knowledge fall into the wrong hands, which was honestly, weirdly enough, their own hands. Because he baked Dr. Pershing expressly to keep him from going to Hux's dad's side. Because Hux was the cloner. It's like, yeah, you took that Persian guy. He was really important. What's going on with him? It's like, he's a lost asset. So if we ever do get a Mandalorian 4 or we get the Mandalorian movie, it's all going to be super interesting. Because even though they closed a loop on this, I do think they opened up so much more, because this, and again, it's that reality that this is in between. These are the stories that are happening in between the original, the original trilogy and the sequels after the prequels. So this is filling in that gap. And within that gap, how things evolve have to still line up with the sequel trilogy, but then also are available for the next trilogy, which is the Rey Skywalker trilogy. That is now, that was in production, but now maybe is on hold because of the writer's strike. Give the writers more money. That's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely.
The biggest problem with the writer's strike is just that everybody's worried about job security, and everybody knows that. And that's the thing. It's like, basically what has happened with the writer's strike is that companies realize, okay, this is the least we can pay writers. But if we put writers in these situations, we can pay them X amount of money, have them develop X amount of content, and we can actually move forward. As a result of this, you had people creating series that then get canceled, and just the entire boom of everything that we've seen in Netflix and the like. And people might have worked in a writer's room, but then weren't made producers after the fact because someone else was sort of in charge of the the writers' islands is what they're calling them. Basically, it's a sweatshop for writers. It's what they called Termite Alley back in the old animation days. So
it's an interesting time to be having this conversation, considering the giant leaps that AI is making. I mean,
yeah, but is it though?
I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. And, that's one of the issues that the Writers Guild are bringing up about, they want to negotiate about how we're using AI. And corporations are honest. Here's what I'm going to say. Corporations are honestly saying, we have no idea how we're going to use AI.
Well, think about it like this. If you were to take every episode of Seinfeld, write those scripts and make AI read those 15 seasons of scripts and say, I want you to make me a series that mirrors the charm of that series, but inject some modern themes into it. I guarantee you one of these AIs, even now, can write something fairly decent enough. I mean, there's a lot of garbage on TV. If you need some filler garbage, you don't need to hire writers to write this filler garbage.
Yeah, but nobody wants to make filler garbage. That's the thing.
But the studios do. That's why we have 30
No. That is a common misconception. They don't want to make garbage. They want to make something that turns a profit.
Right. And what's the least amount of effort we can put in to pull the most amount of profit?
Well, yes. And
there are basic
fair,
lines of human behavior and thought that they can follow to know what the morons are going to click on.
Well, and yes, the thing is that the first guy to invest in AI is going to lose his shirt. That's all I'm saying on that. It's like if you try to produce a show starting with AI, aside from the lawsuits, because that's the thing, because the AI can't have copyright, the people you bring in to punch it up suddenly will have some ownership of your show.
Yeah, and
it's a very complex issue. If the world was so ideal,
we wouldn't be having a writer's strike. I mean, they should, sure, but they won't.
Well, yeah, but that's the thing I don't think, here's what I'm saying. I don't think any of the major studios are even considering using AI in this way right now.
Yeah, nobody was considering AI for half the things that it's doing right now 6 months ago. So the world is moving pretty fast.
You're saying no one was, I don't know what AI is doing right now. I don't know what code is being written by AI aside from literal just bulk code of however it is you make it. So it's sort of like this. It's like, in the old industrial factories, you had a guy screwing lug nuts on tires or on rims, and that was a job. That was the job. And eventually they made a robot to do that. And they screwed the lug nuts on tires, and that was the story. The reality is that right now, when it comes to computer coding, there's probably a lot of lug nuts that got to be screwed onto tires, which is just, we don't need to write all this code. We can write a machine. We've already written these machines. These are these various, what do you call it? Game engines. You have physics engines that says if you want to build a system, here's a physics engine that you can input your characters into the physics engine, and that's going to build your game. Now, what's in the physics engine? No one knows. It's magic. It's effectively magic. It's someone wrote a bunch of programs that we're all going to agree to use. And that took a lot of people running a lot of zeros and ones into a piece of paper to make that physics engine. Now that you could use an AI to do something similar, it's not the end of the world. But I don't think AI is ever going to create a Mario unless it's going to be a Marrow. It's going to be something that is so clearly derivative.
But do you think there's corporations that are willing to take an Amaro and turn a profit off of it? And if they can do that, they don't need to hire a real person to come up with an original idea.
I mean, possibly, but
I mean, just look at the state of movies. Everything's a remake. Everything's rehashed. I mean, it's already like treating
but you know what?
Like they're
here's what I'm going to tell you.
Regurgitating things that have already existed.
Here's what I will tell you. The first people to make an AI film will be a company like Troma. Troma will make an AI written film before anybody else
Well,
because they aren't.
There are fake podcasts up that people have made. They mirror the podcast host and have a dream guest host. And the AI will not only create the visuals of these people sitting in front of each other, talking to each other, but create language and hypothetical conversations that they could have. And they're like, 2-hour conversations that it puts up and that you can follow them. And they seem like a reasonable conversation. You're like, this is an interesting conversation. This is a hypothetical conversation these two people can have. And AI is capable of doing that right now.
But is it popular?
No. But what I'm saying is that things don't come out of the womb popular. Right. But the basics are here now, and enough corporations, enough money and enough smart people behind it can change the landscape and will probably very drastically. So I find it an interesting juxtaposition, having this conversation, the rights of writers at a time when an alternative is rearing its ugly head.
And what it comes down to is what I like to call business lag. So, and this is effectively what happened with streaming. Was that when streaming hit, the writers were still, then this is 15 years ago. The last time we had a writer's strike. Remember that? We got that great, Neil Patrick Harris, Dr. Horrible. So I'm really looking forward to the Dr. Horrible Part 2. But the idea is that, in that moment, what had happened was the landscape of television production had changed from the broadcast model to the streaming model. And suddenly the residual models that people who had been writing on the broadcast models had dramatically changed. Now what's happening is that they had adjusted the modules for streaming, but then, of course, streaming adapted with implying, and this is sort of the double-edged sword of it. They wound up employing far more writers on smaller projects that then they could turn into profit, but it also increased the number of writers who were in the guild. So now, if you want to deal with the guild, you've got to deal with all these writers you already put into the guild by putting them on these smaller projects. So it's sort of it's an interesting way how it all broke down. But effectively what you had a previous system that had a smaller group of writers who had a middle-class lifestyle writing for this broadcast model that suddenly now had to adapt to the streaming model. But in order to have the streaming model work, you need a lot more writers. But because not everything in streaming is going to be a hit, you have to just basically throw everything at the wall. But now we have a lot more writers who are in that situation who now are demanding more money because obviously, what once was a middle-class lifestyle is now less so because there's just so much content out there.
Right.
And even it is not as profitable as everyone wants it to be. And that's
to me like once you get to sweatshop conditions, the next step is automation.
That is true. And to be fair, there is an argument to be said that maybe they will want to use AI as much as they can. Maybe the writers will want to use AI as much as they can, quite frankly.
Yeah. Who can sweet talk the AI the best to get it to write the best material?
Maybe that is, for what it's worth, where we're probably going is how do you program the AI to create a story?
Well, no, the programming is there. You just have to learn how to prompt it to do the things that you want.
Well, you have to know what you want your characters to do.
Right.
And that's what the writer does. And that's really...
Yeah, but a corporate executive can talk to an AI and be like, okay, I want this kind of themes and I want these kind of characters and I want these kind of, archetypal characters in this and I want them to have these sort
and
of
that's
problems.
that's gonna give you complete dreck.
Oh,
I'm just telling you right now.
No, you'd be surprised.
Well,
You'd be surprised.
And again, I guess it goes
and
into...
again, this is just a baby peeking its crown out of the womb at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is, what gets the audience interested is something that they weren't expecting.
Right, but take a look. Think about this, right? How good is the algorithm at predicting the next video that I want to watch? Right, the algorithm knows what we want, and it's only a matter of time before it learns how to give it to us in a digestible format.
Well, and to that extent, what I will say is, I do not find the algorithm is that stimulating. It does have a lot of things I find interesting when I have the time for it.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that, and especially in my own situation, because there is so much extraneous data, because I live in a house with more than one person, it's like when you're looking at individuals, and I guess single people who have their own homes or who have their own accounts, between a certain period of ages, might be a key demographic. But the reality is that by and large, I think most people are dealing with a lot of other inputs into their algorithm.
Yeah, but to say that the algorithm doesn't know us, I don't buy into that. Because just like, maybe when was the last election cycle where Trump won, right? Cambridge Analytica, somebody with nefarious intent and a modicum of smarts was able to take the information given to us by the algorithm and was able to move masses and create tremendous upheaval in the political system. And that was 10 years ago or however long it was, right? With the power at the fingertips of some of these people, it can be very, very specifically used, very impressively, I think. I
believe that's the nightmare scenario.
I agree with you, but I think that's where we're going.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. It's entirely a possibility that that's where we're going. I have what I will always say is I have a hard time understanding how the human mind works. I have a hard time understanding what people like. I know what I like. And I'm sure, not for nothing, a machine could tell me exactly what I would like based on what I like. But the things I like aren't necessarily things I want to eat every day. So I love tacos and I love ice cream.
Individual position. Think about it from a global perspective, right? If you had the foresight of the choices that all the people that have ever been online have made, and you can understand those choices and what motivates those choices and what triggers you can pull to make people make those choices. You have an understanding of that, not just from your own experience, but from the experience of everybody that's on the internet, the immense calculative statistical powers that you would have to be able to drive our baser drives is truly, truly terrifying.
But what I will say to that is that down that road lay the Choco Taco. And the Choco Taco, as you may remember, was something recently discontinued that people lamented. And to that extent, Coca-Cola, the original formula, was something discontinued that people lamented. And every show on Netflix whose cancellation is something people are lamenting tells you that at the end of the day, the true honesty is that what makes a hit and what doesn't make a hit is a very complex mathematical structure that I don't even think computers can figure out yet, because as much as there is what do people want, there's what can we afford.
Right, but that's, again, I think from a level of our own ability to explicate information. Think about like the code for DNA, right? We were for the longest time, for decades and decades, trying to explicate what these protein encoding is the language of protein encoding. We couldn't figure it out. And at our best, we were able to have maybe like a 27% accuracy on what encoding these proteins in this certain way, how they would express themselves. But you feed it into an AI, and within like 2 weeks, it was able to have like a 93% accuracy of learning the language of how these proteins are encoded. So it can do things that are limitations for us, but it's not for it.
Well, except that it had the fact that the knowledge already existed. So
Yeah, but
working backwards,
it's parsing through it is the thing, and the immense amount of data that exists about us is out there.
But what
we don't have the capacity to see those patterns, but it does.
Let me tell you. Let me say this, because I'm going to actually agree with you, but disagree with you at the same time. The Writers Guild are the ones worrying about AI. Who needs to worry about AI are the ones who are already being exploited by it. Which is what?
We all are.
Well, we're being exploited in the fact that we're being told to spend money. Mozz, we're going to spend money anyway.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I spend money as soon as I have it. It's a dirty, filthy thing. Get it out of here. Give me goods and services. Thank you. At least this is a momentary enjoyment for me.
Right.
Stacks of paper in my wallet. Oh, what are those for? Unless I'm paying a stripper, those are completely useless. But no, the person who is most likely to hit a wall with AI are CGI programmers, because these are the people who literally could be replaced by AI. And so here's my big prediction on this. If the Writers Guild of America is smart, I'm not saying they are, but before this all ends, they are going to get all of the code writers of America to join their organization and make code writing the same as letter writing. And suddenly they'll have a lot more clout. Because right now, co-writers don't have a union. And the truth is what the Writers Guild of America is fighting for is far less about the writers right now and the code writers in the future, who are going to be put in a situation where their code they wrote for the AI is not going to return them their
but it's not just the code, it's also the infrastructure. Like these supercomputers that they build to be able to run these calculations cost billions of dollars. And right now,
well, there's already an electricians union, so those guys.
Yeah, no. But
if they want residuals on it, they can get there.
But the coders can join the union, but the AI isn't. The infrastructure, the actual hardware that runs these calculations, you can't make that join the union. You can. All the coders are a dime or a dozen. You can go join the union all you want, but the infrastructure exists, right?
Except it's
not coders. It's the hardware.
It actually is coders. No, it's 100% coders.
Without the hardware, like an individual person can say, I can write all the code I want. If you don't have the billions of dollars to build the machine to be able to leverage that coding or that knowledge, then you're, just a peasant.
I mean, you're not wrong, Mozz, but you're not right. The machine is a machine. It's sort of like saying, I have a Corvette in my driveway. I can drive that.
No, but you can find drivers all the live long day. Just because all the drivers want to create a union doesn't mean you're going to have any effect on the race. It's the people.
If Mario Andretti joins the union, you actually have something to say.
Yeah, nobody has to hire you, right? It's my car, and I'm going to put anything I want into it. You can have all the drivers join whatever, but it's the hardware that's going to make the difference. The knowledge is wonderful.
No, Mozz, you don't understand. And I don't mean to be rude to you. You're conflating hardware with software. Hardware is a box. A box can't move without software.
Right. But you could write all the software you want all the live long day, but if you don't have a computer to run it and you can't afford the billions of dollars to get the computer that can run this kind of code, it's useless.
And if you can't run a $1 billion computer without any software, it's also useless.
Yeah, I understand that, but
I mean,
others are a dime or a dozen.
You can run a supercomputer on the code written for the Commodore 64, and you will have some amazing balloons moving through your screen, but you are not going to have anything compared to what coders are bringing
to
the
but
table.
Here's what I'll say to you. Like football players, right? Oh, they're the ones that are playing the games and whatnot. Gather 12 football players off the street anytime you want. They could be the best players you've ever seen. But if you don't have a franchise behind it and a league to belong to, what are you doing? I think that's the level of difference between
still playing a game.
Right. You're not making millions of dollars and you're not being
so
on
now
TV.
You're complaining. So, and not to be rude, but now you're conflating the NFL with professional wrestling. There's lots of big guys out there who get into fights all the time.
Right.
And yes, it is helpful when they can make money off of that if they're on a stage. But then what you're actually talking about is the stage, not the writing or the performer. You're actually talking about putting it on a stage. And that is what corporations bring, is they can provide a stage.
Yeah, and they can replace the actors on the stage at any time. There's more being born every day.
They can try to. I mean, not for nothing, it's really hard to replace an Andre the Giant. It's very hard to replace a Hulk Hogan or a Rock.
Yeah, but they've done it over and over again. You just named a couple, you know?
Well, what they've done is they've had other people be in less popular roles.
I mean, one could argue that Stone Cold was way more popular than Hulk Hogan ever was.
I'm sorry, what?
One could argue that Stone Cold was way more popular than Hulk Hogan ever was. Hulk Hogan was in like 3 movies. The Rock has been in like 30.
The Rock is way more popular than
That's
most
my point.
Any other
so
record.
You might think you can't find another Hulk Hogan, but they'll find one.
Well, yes, except that The Rock also knows his own value and then writes his own tickets. So it's, as you break it down, you understand how these things do break down even further.
Mm.
You know, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, at the end of the day, there's always a human that there is a human at the end of every Horatio Alger story. As many millionaires and lucky situations come through it, there's always a human.
Right, but there's humans on one side of the millions and humans on the other side of the millions.
Yeah, but if the humans on the one side of the millions could actually do anything, they wouldn't need all the other humans.
Right, that's why they created AI.
Yeah, and you know what? It's actually, and and let me tell you this: the minute that Elon Musk fires everyone at Twitter and puts it all on an AI chat bot, we're gonna see.
Then and all these cranky people can be happy being cranky at bots, and they could leave the world alone.
We're getting close to it, and it'll be interesting. And I will not put it past Elon Musk to make that brilliant of a millionaire decision. You know, that is a perfect storm of where could AI completely be the dominant thing and save him a few $1 billion, not a lot of $1 billion, because you'd have to license you still have to license the AI bot from the person who made the AI.
Yeah, unless you made it.
Yeah, but then he has to hire a bunch of people to make his AI bot.
No, he already has. It's like one of the biggest supercomputers there is. I forget.
Okay. Mozz. You're conflating supercomputer with, and I'm like, those are two completely different artistries.
Wait. What are supercomputers and what was the other thing?
And the software that runs on it. So an AI chatbot is a very complex set of codes that have been developed over decades by hundreds of writers.
But do you think that they can do anything with that code unless you have a computer to run it, powerful enough to run it?
No, well, it's sort of a chicken and the egg. You can't do. Here's what I'll tell you: a Twitter server is useless for an AI chat without a Twitter server to run on it, and a AI chat is not very useful without a Twitter server to run it. So this is the thing: the AI chat takes up actually a remarkably small space because it's numbers. I mean, it takes up space. But it's like, you know, how you run it as a computer, you probably could run it on any significantly synchronized supercomputer. Like 100 PS4s, you could run it.
I think you're very, very mistaken about that. The size.
Well, no, I'm saying to run it. To run it in Mozz, to run it in the sense that one person asks it one question. To have it so that 1 million people ask it one question, that's a much more complex process, and that needs the extra physical equipment.
No. In order to run any calculation with a large enough data set to be able to give you a conversational answer, that requires supercomputers to the level that I don't think you're comprehending. Like there's only like 4 big supercomputers enough to run something like ChatGPT. Google has one, Elon has one, China has one, and I think one other big government has one. There's only like a couple that are big enough to do this. We're now getting to the point where all the hypothetical ideas and codes that have been written for decades can finally be leveraged, right? So on one side of the equation, you have a corporation that has the capacity to leverage the decades of research. And then you have people that are just running on hypothetical ideas of what it could be.
Okay, but within that structure, you still have the two groups. You have the workers who create the product and those who control the means of production. And in that dynamic, at the end of the day, the means of production are really useless without the people who build the product.
Yeah, I mean, it's an idealized fantasy. You know, I can understand that that's the way the world should be, but the people that are in control can find very, very clever ways to make people do things.
Yes, they give them money. I mean, we know how
it's more than money. It's about controlling the cultural narrative and getting people's baser emotions poked at, and then getting en masse people to act a certain way. You can direct a lot of behavior with mechanisms like that.
I mean, I don't disagree with you, but I also don't.
I just don't think we, as the people using the system, don't have as much power as we would like to have. It's a nice idea to think that without us, none of it would run, and we can strike and whatnot. But
no, Mozz.
The little power we have is eroding daily.
You're mistaking the people who use with the people who built. I have a lovely glass here filled with a drink. I cannot make this drink. I rely on people who make this drink. Union workers. I check. They make the drink. I drink the drink. It makes me happy, and that is the system. And there's a fair exchange of my money for what I do for my job for what they do for their job. And yes, there's someone who bought all the machines who's making more money than all of us. But so long as we all have a living wage and a nice middle-class life, no one's complaining.
Right, and I think we're about to start complaining a lot.
Well, that's the thing. And the thing is that when we start complaining a lot, the robots don't work. That's the thing. That's what I think. I think what you're missing is the idea that the robots don't have a motivation.
We can give one to them now.
Nah. Not really. We think we can. I mean, honestly, Mozz, there's nobody to know until it happens.
Yeah.
But I'm still a believer in the classic lore of Rossum's Universal Robotics, which says that the robots, when they killed all the humans, realized, oh, we lack the creative spark to actually make more robots, and now we're doomed. And that is the truth of it. Is I think that at the end of the day, maybe Elon Musk will figure out a way to run things by pure chatbot, but I think that without workers willing to build and maintain the chatbots, it will all fall apart. And, and maybe that's how humanity dies, or maybe that's how we wind up living. Because society falls, everything goes to cash for a while, and the earth heals itself.
Yeah.
Which might not be bad.
Right. In the end, we'll find our way, but it's going to be a tough road to get there.
It could be.
Unwieldy demons that we have unearthed, and we have to come to terms with them before we can move forward.
And speaking of which, let's get back to the Mandalorian, because this ties in expressly into the final few scenes, where we do see Grogu finally being officially adopted by Din Djarin and becoming Din Grogu.
I love how religion has loopholes. It's so cute.
Yeah, but you know what? And it's what I always said. This is what everyone knew he was Goku's dad.
Yeah,
except for Din. It's like, I guess I'm his dad. Okay, I can work with that. And now he is his dad, and they go to retire. Well, not retire, but start their own thing. We get IG-12 in. IG-12 is our new marshal, voiced by Taika Waititi, who I'm sure recorded all of.
Is that right?
Yeah, Taika Waititi.
Oh.
Are you sure his name?
And I'm sure he recorded all of his lines. Hey, Taika Waititi still wants jobs with Disney. So
I mean, hey, as long as I don't know it's him, I think I'm fine with it. It's when Taika Waititi's front and center that I'm like, whoa, pull it back a little bit, dude.
Yes, so he's going to be there, and it's going to be much like the yes, yes, no, no buttons, where it's a bunch of words coming out in a droid speak, which is AI that they've had for years. Thank you, Majel Barrett. And so that is what we're going to have. And at the very end, the last scene is Grogu levitating the frog, but not eating the frog.
I didn't know he didn't eat a master.
Quiet you.
Is he going to turn into a vegetarian now?
Well, no, but he's coming to terms with the life around him, and also understanding that. And this is his maturing. This is his sign that he is maturing. That it is no longer about just his appetites, but the Force and the universe as a whole. All right, Mozz. Well, actually, first, before we get to you, let everyone out there know that if they would like to write to us, they can do so in the old-fashioned email way at CapesandLunatics@gmail.com. That's CapesandLunatics@gmail.com. Call us at 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-CAPES. And go to linktree, linktr.ee/CapesandLunatics to find us, talk to us, write to us, click on all of our links, give us money through Patreon or Cash App, and even find all of our other shows. And with that said, Mozz, can you pause for 1 second?
Yep.
And, of course, Mozz, if they ever like to reach out to you and talk to you about what you'd like to talk about, how can they do so?
Oh, they can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com or find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, always follow me on or write to me in the old-fashioned email way. That's what I was looking for. Write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way mothers and fathers once did it. Superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters. I live tweet things when I feel like it or when new shows are on, which may be a while because of the writer's strike, at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsscr. Look for the 2 E's in the middle.
For quality. Bing.
Thank you, Mozz. All right, me hearties, you've come to the end of another adventurous turn on the briny seas of Sargassus that is the internet. Please come back again next week as we once again sail full stream ahead. Arrgh.